In this video, we're going to be defeating all 6 bosses currently available in Tinkerlands. We're going to complete all the Steam achievements and find all the community members, including the Speaking Cocoon. We're also going to be finding lots of loot and do lots of crafting. This is the saga of new character, because yes, I did indeed forget to name my character. What a great start. And speaking of great starts, I found myself shipwrecked on the beach and surrounded by debris, presumably from the shipwreck. Close to me there was also a crate containing an axe, a pickaxe, a stick and some torches along with some bread, which was nice because I was presumably pretty hungry after being, shipwrecked. Someone was calling out for me, so with my new tools I cleared the debris and made my way over to him. I also completely missed this little coin thief running away from me, not that I would have had any chance of actually catching him if I'd noticed him. This was the guide. He informed me that the captain was missing and asked me to go find him somewhere on the island. So I guess we're just crossing our fingers that the captain didn't drown in the shipwreck. At this point Heather joined me, and so we started clearing the nearby debris as it was getting darker. This turned out to be a good move as we needed both stone and wood along with what looked like thread to make a crafting table, which we wanted as soon as we possibly could get it. We spent a little while gathering more resources in the dark, dropping down a few torches before I finally chopped a palm tree. The palm gave me leaves which we could use to craft string, which we needed for the crafting table, so now we knew exactly what we needed to do to be able to craft the crafting table. Once we had gathered everything, I crafted the crafting table, which was actually called a working table, and then I spent a while looking over all the new things I could craft, which included better armor, new tools and weapons. I immediately crafted a stone pickaxe, and then I went back out to explore some more and gather some more materials. I pretty quickly encountered a chest filled with materials and some doubloons and a slingshot, which I promptly used to murder an innocent little bunny, because what else would you do with a slingshot? With no remorse for my actions, I realized that the empty chest I had just looted would probably be pretty beneficial to bring back home so I could use it for storage. So I picked up the chest and then I started mining some stones. As I was mining stones, one of the little pesky coin thieves popped out of one of the stones, but this time I actually noticed him. So this time I gave chase, but the little guy was way too fast for me, so as he fled out into the ocean, I gave up and decided to return back to base. Back at base, I replaced my wooden axe with a stone axe before going on a bit of a crafting spree. I crafted a shovel, a wooden sword that would hopefully help me next time I encountered a coin thief. I also made a wooden body armor to help increase my defense. I also made an anvil and a sawmill, allowing me to craft better armor and weapons along with building materials and furniture. Then I set my eyes on crafting the leather boots, which ironically was an accessory and not an armor piece, but these would increase my max speed, and I really like being fast, so crafting these became a big priority for me. The leather boots required more strength, but more importantly, a lot more leather. So I guess it was time to murder even more innocent bunnies so I could wear their skin as an accessory. A friendly skeleton then showed up selling Halloween candy, but this was of no interest to me currently. I spotted another chest inside a small labyrinth, but before I could get to it, I was attacked by a vicious slime, so I poked it a few times with my stick. I did not respect the labyrinth, so I simply destroyed the hedge blocking my way. In the chest I found a compressed fly swatter offering an additional 40% knockback, which seemed really useful. And upon being attacked by another green gelatin-looking monstrosity, I could confirm that the fly swatter was in fact useful against other things than just flies. Next I found the bard wandering around in the forest, and he told me that he could help me protect me from the heat of the desert. However, he did not work for free, and he wanted me to build a whole house before he was willing to consider helping me. I spotted a health and mana flower along with the chest behind an iron fence, which I unfortunately could not break yet as my pickaxe just wasn't strong enough. So I took note of the location so I could return here later once I'd upgraded my pickaxe. Next I swatted some slimes before returning to base to build a house for the bard. I used some of the wood I'd collected to craft crafting materials for building a house. I also crafted a bed, which unfortunately cost me a bit of leather, so my leather boots would just have to wait because of this greedy bard. Just as I finished building the house, I was distracted by a traveling merchant, so I forgot all about moving the bard into the house I'd built. The traveling merchant sold a bunch of interesting items, including the leather boots, which I unfortunately could not afford, so I still had to murder more innocent rabbits. I spent a while looking at various crafting recipes and realized that I could craft a slime voodoo doll, which could be used to summon the Slime King, which was the first boss of the game. Using some rocks, some coal and a torch, I also built a furnace, which would come in handy once I acquired some ore later on. I also built a house and a second bed, which meant that I now had no leather left, so I guess I just didn't actually want the leather boots after all. Thankfully, I spotted an innocent rabbit running past the house, so I obviously gave chase and swatted it for its leather. It should be mentioned that during all of this, Heather was off exploring somewhere else on the island, and I have no idea what she was doing. I encountered the traveling merchant again, and this time he sold a portable candle, which would have been really useful because it got dark very soon thereafter, and I could hardly see anything and I hadn't brought any torches with me. In the dark I encountered a goblin, which, once I swatted it enough, dropped me some leather. Being out at night turned out to be a dangerous affair, and I soon suffered the wrath of the goblin's friends. I guess that was one way to find Heather. I had managed to gather 7 leather from fighting goblins and slaying rabbits. Heather had also managed to gather 6 leather, so we actually had enough leather that I could craft a pair of the leather boots right now, which I did. We however still needed another 7 leather, so Heather could also craft a pair of the leather boots. So, we swatted some more innocent rabbits. As day 5 dawned, I encountered the traveling merchant again. He had refreshed his inventory again, and as always he sold some interesting stuff, including a healing staff and some flippers that would allow you to swim faster. I spent most of day 5 gathering materials and building a new house for the blacksmith. The blacksmith allowed us to reforge our equipment, essentially paying gold to give our equipment various negative or positive enchants. It was however still a little too expensive, so this was a very powerful unlock and it would come in real handy later on in the playthrough once we acquired some more gold. The blacksmith also sold some iron tools, but again we had very little gold, so it wasn't very applicable to us right now. I crafted some wood boots and a wood helm to further increase my defense before heading out into the night. I soon encountered some more goblins, and it turned out that my new armor did in fact belong in the wood tier category, same as my skills. Back at base I crafted a wood staff. This staff allowed me to expend mana to shoot a magic fairy projectile at enemies. Heather had found a slime voodoo doll, and emboldened by my newfound magic capabilities, I convinced her that it was a good idea to try to summon the Slime King. This was a big mistake. The massive slime had a ton of health. I mean, I'm not sure if 600 actually qualifies as a ton, but at the time it seemed insurmountable. Like slimes do, he would bounce around while shooting projectiles and summoning slimes to help him. Despite all our best efforts, hacking away, swatting and shooting magic fairies at him, we eventually perished and the slime voodoo doll had been wasted. After our humiliating defeat, we ventured back out in search of better equipment so that we could get our revenge on the Slime King. I soon encountered a foe better suited for my skill level, a field of sunflowers which gave me an abundance of plant fiber. I also found a healing staff that could shoot healing projectiles, and soon after I found my first life flower, increasing my max health from 40 to 60. In a ring of flowers I found 2 iron deposits and 2 copper deposits. Unfortunately my pickaxe was only strong enough to handle the copper. I also found the desert, which even at night was too hot without the stupid bard's help. And at a field of flowers with a suspicious looking statue I found another life flower. However, before I could grab it I was ambushed by a horde of goblins and I had to fight for my life. It was a hard battle in the dark and I nearly died multiple times. I even tried befriending the goblins by shooting healing projectiles at them with my new healing staff, but to no avail. Thankfully the extra health came in handy and I barely managed to defeat them, grab the life flower and further increase my max health. I continued exploring in the dark and soon found a rusty armor, doubling the defense of my crappy wood armor. This find was amazing news to me. As day 7 dawned I found another chest I couldn't access without a better pickaxe, and once again I took note of the location. As I had my priorities in order, I did some grave robbing and discovered a few new materials, including mummy bandages and sand. Sand is a pretty important material as it's necessary for making glass, which is necessary to craft potions, but more about that later. On my way home I found a third life flower, bringing my max health all the way up to 100. Once arriving home I crafted a copper bar and spent some time looking at all the new crafting options I had available. To craft copper tools I still needed to find an unknown ingredient, but crafting copper armor and weapons could be done just by finding enough copper bars. As the copper armor and weapons would be substantial upgrades, I desperately had to find some copper. Once I was done dreaming about the copper equipment, the most amazing thing happened. Right outside our base the bunnies had gathered, maybe plotting their revenge? Without any consideration, I quickly pulled out my fly swatter and started swatting away, and this swatting spree netted me a delightful 10 level. Heather had found multiple mana flowers, so she gave one to me, increasing my max mana from 20 to 40. Then I decided it was time to explore the eastern areas of the island. Here I encountered the snow biome. I'll be honest, I have no idea why I wasn't just moving the bard into a house so I could start exploring the desert. My only real explanation was that I was probably just being stubborn because of his refusal to help me before I actually built a house for him. It appeared I couldn't do much exploration here yet as I needed some sort of protection from the cold first, but I decided to try it anyway. How dangerous could some cold weather really be? Then I spent some time looking at what things I could craft, and saw a silhouette that looked like it could be a scarf, which I figured would actually work for protecting me against the cold. To craft it I still needed 2 unknown ingredients however, so the scarf looking accessory would have to wait. I met the bard again and continued ignoring him. Aside from that and swatting some goblins, the rest of the night was pretty uneventful. Having still not given the bard a house, I spent the morning of day 8 mining some copper at the outskirts of the desert. Here I also encountered an eerie red corrupted area, and after quickly realizing my pickaxe wasn't strong enough to break any of the materials there, I decided I better leave that cursed area for now. I mined some more copper and chopped some cacti. I also found a chest containing an energetic crit charm offering 10% increased crit chance and an additional 10 max health. This was another great find. Back home I used the copper ores I'd gathered to craft 7 copper bars before evicting the skeleton from his house. As I still didn't care for the bard, I had apparently decided that I was more interested in seeing what the merchant was selling, so she got the house. Somewhere along the way I had also found another mana flower, increasing my max mana to 60. On day 9 I finally decided that I better build a new house for the bard, and once the swatting of a rascally rabbit was out of the way, the bard could finally move into his new house. By talking to the bard we could now get a buff that would keep us safe in the desert for 10 minutes at a time. Next, I spent 3 of our 8 copper bars crafting a cauldron and used some sand to craft glass that I used to craft a bottle. The bottle unlocked several potion recipes, including health potions, fire resist potions, and teleportation potions, which would allow me to return home with ease. I also realized that if we gathered 6 iron bars, we'd be able to craft a grappling hook, which sounded really cool, although I kinda doubted that it'd be very useful in a top-down game. Now it was finally time to explore the desert. Heather and I both got our buffs from the bard and went on our way south. On the way there, a skeleton got angry that I had had the audacity to disrupt his eternal slumber with some innocent grave robbing, and so I got to put the bard to work providing me with a new buff again. When I finally made it to the desert, I encountered a walking cactus. It was in a prickly mood and it pounced at me and shot out volleys of needles, which I thankfully mostly avoided. You might have noticed the enemies flashing to signal that they're about to do an attack, which was extremely helpful, especially for avoiding the ranged attacks. Unfazed by earlier misfortune, I did some more grave robbing and spent the night mining copper and fighting off both cacti and mummies. Okay, mostly I was just running away from them. We both continued this endeavor throughout the morning until my buff from the bard expiring prompted me to return home. A cactus had dropped me a Frenzied Rose accessory, providing me with 1.5% speed and 10 thorns damage to attackers. Very fitting. I equipped the rose as I only had 2 of my 6 accessory slots filled at this point. Then I did some inventory management, if you can call it that. Our inventory throughout this entire playthrough was a mess, as we just didn't bother doing much organizing, so yeah, it was bad. At this point we had also found 4 slime voodoo dolls, so it was probably time to try fighting the Slime King again before too long. My gold had also accumulated, so I decided to pay the merchant a visit and found that I could afford either the portable candle, which would be extremely beneficial considering how dark the game was, or I could get the frog leg, which would grant me a dash. That choice was very easy. It pleased me greatly that I could now dash on a pretty short cooldown. Heather was still off exploring in the desert, so I decided to do some crafting. I discovered that I could craft hot drinks, which would provide me with 5 minutes of protection against the cold. I just needed more fire flowers, which I could find in the desert. Then I used a wooden sword and 20 cactus pieces to craft a cactus sword to replace my trusty swatter. The swatter would be missed, but it has served me well. We had found quite a bit of sand in the desert, so I crafted some glass allowing me to craft the desert goggles so I could now explore the desert freely without worrying about a timer. It was also a great benefit not to have to interact with the stupid bard anymore. With all the copper we had found, we both crafted a full set of copper armor and I sold my old armor to the merchant, netting me 190 gold. At this point I was getting a little frustrated that we still hadn't found the missing material for crafting the copper pickaxe. Surely I'd be able to find it in the desert. However, I was not having much luck, although it was great not being limited by the timer. I did find another accessory, which gave me some extra melee damage, crit chance, and some extra defense as well. While harvesting fire flowers for crafting hot drinks, I encountered a new part of the desert with dried out trees. For some reason, it didn't occur to me that maybe I should try chopping these trees. Exploring in this part of the desert, I ran into some not so friendly guys who hurled rocks at me while pounding their fists into the ground. I was bolder enough to try to take them on though, but unfortunately I had managed to forget all about my newfound dash ability, so avoiding their attacks didn't go all too well. Thankfully I remembered it just as I started fleeing, so I actually managed to barely escape. As I decided it was time to return home again, I found another life flower buried in the sand between 6 fire flowers. This brought my health up to 130. Upon returning home, I sold an extra rose accessory that I had found for 500 gold, and finally I could purchase the portable candle. I was really looking forward to being able to see more while out in the dark. Then I crafted more copper bars, which I used to craft a spear that I promptly decided that I just didn't like without even properly trying it. What a waste. So instead I replaced my cactus sword with a copper sword. I spent 270 gold reforging my new copper sword to a compressed copper sword with an additional 40% knockback. Then I crafted a tinkerer's table which could be used to combine certain trinkets. I combined my crit charm and my frog leg along with my desert goggles and my portal candle, and this way I freed up 2 additional accessory slots. Unfortunately, reforging these new trinkets was still way too expensive, so reforging them would have to wait a bit. I unfortunately forgot to record the next day's expedition, but it wasn't a very noteworthy one on my end at least. Heather on the other hand found the missing material that we needed to craft copper tools. That was really exciting. As you might have guessed, the missing material did in fact come from these trees in the desert biome, and it was called wasteland wood. I had also crafted a copper bow as Heather had found an interesting accessory that transformed regular arrows into fire arrows when you fired them. I reforged the bow a few times until I ended up with an acceptable reforge, granting the bow plus 20% damage. Now I felt ready to take on the Slime King. Unfortunately, Heather was deep within the desert and busy exploring, so while waiting for her, I decided to go test out my new bow while also returning to the iron fence I was incapable of breaking earlier. The flowers behind the iron fence netted me an additional 20 max health and mana. As you can see from how I absolutely destroyed these slimes, my power level had increased significantly, so I felt pretty good about our chances of taking down the Slime King this time. My confidence was not unwarranted. Upon being summoned, the Slime King's enormous jelly-like body landed right on top of the merchant's house. Thankfully, the wooden walls were apparently stronger than wooden armor, so no structural damage was done. Like last time we fought him, he bounced around while shooting projectiles. The small slimes he had summoned was busy inspecting our village, however, so this time it was a 2v1, as fair a fight as we could hope for. It turned out that we had probably waited slightly too long before trying again, as we easily disposed of the gelatinous monarch this time. The victory awarded us with a jelly pistol capable of using mucus from slimes for ammunition. We then proceeded to summon and defeat the Slime King 4 more times, earning ourselves more of that sweet loot and a decent sum of gold as well. 4,000 of which we spent purchasing 2 iron chakrams from the traveling merchant who conveniently showed up just as we had enriched ourselves. The chakrams could be thrown out like boomerangs of sorts, which was very handy. After the purchase, I had just enough gold left to try reforging my new chakram once. I got the deadly tag that granted the chakram plus 30% damage. Very nice. We crafted hot drinks and ventured out to explore the snow biome to the east, this time properly prepared. My deadly iron chakram was in fact deadly. Upon reaching the snow biome, we drank our hot drinks and basically immediately found an entrance to a cave. This entrance was blocked by a stone which our pickaxes could not yet handle, so we spent all day in the snow mining iron, exploring and fighting off the enemies of the region. We also met our first Yeti who threw a snowball in my face. What an abominable thing to do. Picking up the Yeti's fur taught us the recipe for the warm scarf accessory, so it was clear we needed to hunt down more Yetis for their fur. We spent all night looking for the elusive Yetis while drinking our hot drinks to survive the cold. It was pretty uneventful except for fighting off enemies, mining more iron and looting a couple of chests, one of which gave me the brutal fireball spell. The fireball spell was pretty effective, but I couldn't keep up with the mana cost, so I kept using my chakram as well. I also completely missed this mana flower as I got swarmed by enemies. The fighting felt like it would never end, and it ended up lasting all night. Towards the end of the night, I was rewarded when I was attacked by another Yeti. This was great as keeping up with the drinks was getting annoying. Following this, I decided that it was time to return home to see if I could craft a scarf. Each scarf only required 1 Yeti fur, so we could both craft one. The guy told me that if I managed to find a feather accessory, I'd be able to combine it with the scarf to create a feather cloak. So I had to keep an eye out for a feather. I used wood to craft coal and crafted 18 iron bars. I had not learned my lesson from the desert, however, and had completely ignored all the trees in the snow biome, so I couldn't craft a pickaxe just yet. As a consolation prize, I crafted an iron hook. It could, as you might expect, hook onto and pull me towards any surface such as walls or trees, which was indeed cool, but I didn't utilize it very much during this playthrough. Heather returned from the snow biome as well, and she had found some interesting stuff that she didn't need. A pair of flippers to increase my swim speed, along with a reusable recall scroll allowing me to teleport back to base at will. At the Tinkerer's table, I chose to combine my new flippers with my leather boots before testing out the recall scroll. Heather had also once again done a better job than me gathering materials. For instance, she had chopped the trees in the snowy biome, which meant that we could now craft iron tools. At this point, I made an interesting decision. We were running low on regular wood, so before crafting an iron axe, I decided to go out and chop no less than 181 pieces of wood using my copper axe. While chopping away, a coin thief popped out of one of the trunks, and I did a terrible job giving chase. Thankfully for me, he got stuck on a cluster of trees, so I finally managed to take him down, and he dropped a life flower and about 400 coins. Now that the chopping was done, it was time for me to craft some iron tools. I also sold my old tools before going out to meet Heather at the cave. With our new pickaxes, we broke the boulder blocking the entrance and discovered the cave. Inside, we met the miner who had been trapped there because of the boulder blocking his way. He told us that he had discovered something eerie at the center of the caves and marked it on our maps. I have no idea how the miner had survived this long in the mines because it was a very dangerous place to be and we were under constant attack from skeletons. It was however also a very rewarding place to be. We quickly found our first gold ore before encountering a skeletal pirate captain. Hopefully this was not the captain that we were looking for. Anyways, he tried to force me to join his ranks of skeletal pirates, but I thankfully respawned at home like usual. I had picked up enough gold to craft our first gold bar, which unlocked the usual crafting recipes, of course excluding the gold tools. At this point I had embraced the killing of innocent critters, so on my way back to the caves I threw my chakram at a penguin. The righteousness of my actions was promptly rewarded as the penguin dropped the feather that I needed to craft the feather cloak. Upon entering the cave I found myself in the midst of battle between Heather and 2 skeletons. I of course helped her out, and soon after I found myself fighting off 2 skeletons while Heather was too busy mining for gold to help me out. I guess that she's a bit of a gold digger. We killed another skeleton captain and another one. There sure were a lot of skeleton captains in this cave. We should probably have crafted some healing potions before going in here, but I used my healing staff to replenish Heather's health. I found a powerful airstock to replace my copper sword and it had a very fast attack speed, which I really enjoyed. Also notice how I immediately stopped mining here to help Heather out. A little later I lost track of my health, and given that our current equipment was not very strong, I suffered yet another death. Back home I crafted and reforged the feathered cloak, giving it plus 10 max mana. By itself, the feathered cloak gives you immunity to cold, and it also gives you 10% attack speed. At this point, Heather returned home, and she gave me a mana flower as she now had more mana than me. I crafted some gold bars, some iron bars, some more gold bars, and then I crafted a gold sword and reforged it with plus 20% speed. I also upgraded my armor with a new gold helm, an iron chest, and a pair of iron boots before selling my old equipment. Then I went back to the snow biome where I found a mana flower before getting absolutely swarmed by enemies. As there was a chest nearby that I wanted to loot, I stood my ground. Without kidding, I was probably fighting enemies for like 5 minutes straight before finally succumbing to the never-ending waves of enemies. I ran back to the chest, this time without getting swarmed by enemies, and though I had to deal with the blue slime, I was successful. I built a new house for the skeleton, and I decided to see what his Halloween candy was all about, so I spent 400 gold buying a rare candy with a triple question mark effect. I also had a quick look at his crafting recipes, but I hadn't unlocked any of them yet. The candy was even more unhealthy than I would have guessed, and I lost nearly 75% of my health just from eating that one piece. Regardless, I decided that I needed to try just one more piece, which of course took me out entirely. It's worth noting that the candy could in fact give beneficial effects too, but after this experience I was not about to try it again anytime soon. Then I did some reforging before going to explore the southern part of the island. Here we found the swamp, met the witch, and I once again suffered a rapid death. Back home I crafted a house for the witch. She sold various herbs along with healing and mana potions for 50 gold a pop. I also built a house for the miner, and with the miner moved in, we were only missing one more community member. I was back in the swamp for all of 30 seconds before getting sniped out of nowhere and almost immediately killed. I really didn't like the swamp. It should be said that Heather had been faring quite a bit better than me, and while I was busy dying and building houses, she had managed to collect a lot of resources and also managed to cut trees in the swamp. And as I clearly needed upgrades before entering the swamp again, I crafted the remaining gold armor pieces and a gold pickaxe, and I also did some reforging. Then we went to explore the corrupted center of the map together. Here we fought bigger blood slimes and tried mining what looked like bones, blood and intestines, but none of them yielded any resources. At the center of the corrupted area we found a beating heart. After I had healed Heather, we unsuccessfully tried breaking it. Next I tried summoning the Slime King in the snow biome, as I was curious to see if he'd change with the biome. He did not, but he did drop me an energetic loggy mustache, offering me 10 more max health on top of the log increase already provided by the mustache. At this point we decided that it was time to go to the eerie center of the cave, so we fought our way down through the cave, using our healing staffs to heal each other as necessary. We also found several chests and various little scenes along the way. In one of them I had to tread carefully while avoiding spike traps on the floor, but on the way out I realized I could have used the power of the pickaxe instead. A few chests later we reached the center of the cave. There was a lot of spiderwebs covering both the walls and the ground, and in the middle of the room a talking cocoon. Eerie indeed. We broke the cocoon and out came the captain, who was in fact not a skeleton. Our actions had apparently woken the mineral spider, as the boss hellfire at the top of our screen informed us. A massive ball of eyes and legs came creeping out from the shadows. It charged at me and I skillfully dashed out of the way. Then out of nowhere it fired a giant laser that I skillfully ran away from. I cut and sliced with my sword while Heather ran in, attempting to do the same. Another giant laser across the screen took out Heather. It was now just me and the beast, and of course its 8-legged freak babies. I'm honestly not sure what killed me, but I think I might have just died from standing beneath the boss. And in the end we had only managed to deal an embarrassing 545 damage to the mineral spider, so there was definitely room for improvements. Despite our failure, our mission was a success. The captain was freed. So I built a house for her, and she told me that she was supposed to give me access to a boat so I could explore other islands. But as a consolation prize, she instead offered me the chance to wishlist Tinkerlands. This also completed the achievement to find all community members. For the time being, we still had plenty to do on the current island, considering we still had 5 more bosses to defeat. We returned to the swamp as Heather had found an altar where an offering could be made. We had also somehow worked out that the offering must be 5 eyes of newt. Then I randomly took a swim, and then we started searching for more eyes of newt. After a while a fishy fellow dropped one for me, and a while later a frog dropped another one. And as Heather had 3 eyes, we now had enough. 3 eyes of newt, that is. So we returned to the altar. After slotting the 5 eyes into the crown of the altar, the most hideous thing leapt out. Almost as hideous as the bar. The frog prince spurted bubbles in all directions and leapt at us, and we only narrowly avoided getting hit. We also took out a couple of mosquitoes and then started hacking away. More bubbles, and this time Heather was struck. So anyway, I pulled out my healing staff and started blasting. I don't know if it's because I don't see so good, or Heather is just extremely skilled, but she somehow managed to dodge almost every single projectile, except of course the burby bubbles. Following that mess, I don't know what happened, but Heather was slain off screen, and so I once again found myself alone against a grotesque being. I had no mana and only 79 health. This was my chance to redeem myself, and so I did. The wannabe Prince Charming even tried to tongue kiss me as a last-ditch effort, but I easily dodged, and he took a chakram to his ugly face. The locals would not let me inspect our loot in peace, so I used the recall scroll to return home. We'd gotten several interesting items, most notable the Frog Prince's crown. While it offered lower defense than my gold helm, it provided an additional 50 max health and mana. We'd also gotten an accessory that would make ammo bounce on the ground, and we had even taken the frog's tongue, which served as a chain with longer range than the iron chain. Lastly, we had gotten a hammer that shot 3 bubbles on attack. I was the true Frog Prince now. Granted, a much more handsome version, of course. We were however at a loss for where to find materials for the next tier of armor, weapons and tools, as at this point we had fully explored the island. So I went back to the cave where I found a biome full of glowing mushrooms. For the first time upon discovering a new biome, I remembered my axe existed and chopped the mushrooms. This unlocked several new mushroom crafting recipes. I had strangely been relatively undisturbed in the cave, but the piece ended here. I was attacked by a less scary version of the infected from The Last of Us, though they were just as deadly. Thankfully the bubble hammer proved quite effective, especially as each bubble would knock the enemies back slightly. After some more material gathering, I decided I had better head home. We could not craft the new mushroom recipes at any of our crafting stations at home, so the next day we returned to the mushroom biome together. The spawn rates were quite fungally insane and we were soon overwhelmed, or at least I was. Up until this point we had not been using many consumables aside from the occasional healing potion, but before returning I bought candied apples from the friendly skeleton. These would increase my max health by 50 for 15 minutes. I also crafted a peaceful potion which was supposed to halve the enemy spawn rate for 5 minutes. Back in the cave the potion seemed to reduce the spawn rate by a lot more than just 50%. Frankly there hardly seemed to be any enemies at all. I suspect this has something to do with the day-night cycle as well, though it was kinda hard to tell while inside the cave. We found a chest and then a minecart track. I had not been building any tracks as I had not yet figured out how to craft a minecart. Regret. All you needed to do was right-click the tracks. Unfortunately, any enemies on the tracks would damage you on impact, so riding the cart was a dangerous affair. Especially when the head wearing the crown lacks the brain cells required to get out of said cart. Hardly the first time a monarch has required help exiting a vehicle, though this time the help was not appreciated. And back to the cave again. I have no idea why the orange part of the map was explored, by the way, but since it was clearly a different biome, we decided to go there next. To get there I mined my way through a long stretch of cave walls and finally I discovered the Halloween biome. I chopped some pumpkins and a scarecrow before fighting a ghost. The ghost dropped a needle, which was one of 2 crafting ingredients needed for crafting the cursed doll. And with the cursed doll we'd be able to summon the Halloween boss. I also found a candy bag containing some random candy in a chest. Due to Heather disconnecting we had to restart the game at this point. So back home I tried eating some rare candy and had another case of food poisoning. But on my next piece I finally received a positive buff, 15 minutes of increased defense. Next I did some reforging and also got the legendary reforge on my pickaxe, which was another achievement completed. Then I attempted to mine the corrupted heart again, but my tool was still too low tier. I had not realized that increasing my mining damage through reforging or other buffs does not actually increase the tier of your tools. We decided it was probably a good idea to get a crown for Heather, so we went back to the swamp. Here we spent a while farming more eyes of newt so we could summon the Frog Prince again. Once we had found enough eyes, we fought the hideous wannabe me again. This time it wasn't much of a challenge and we took him down pretty quickly, as we had hoped this rewarded us with a crown for Heather along with another tongue and a bow that would randomly shoot bubbles and another trinket. You might have seen these thumbers that we had placed around our base. Well, I figured that if we'd place one of them in the desert, something would probably happen. So I tried doing just that. I ran to the desert, I placed down the thumber, and then nothing. I repeated this in multiple places in the desert without any success. Had we actually realized that the drawing on the thumper was a snowflake, we might have been a little more successful. But we'll get back to the thumbers later. I read somewhere that you could get a magical axe and pickaxe at 2 of the 4 corners of the map, so we both took a long swim. I checked the right side of the map and Heather the left, and as you can see I found absolutely nothing while Heather found 2 tiny little islands, each with a chest containing the tools on it. At this stage in the game the tools turned out to be very useless however, especially as they weren't much better than our gold tools, and since they were magic, they came with a mana cost attached. Neither of us liked that mana cost, so we didn't really use these tools at all. We figured that it was now time to attempt the mineral spider again, but I was tired of running to the cave, so I built a railway. Inside the cave I ate bread and candy to increase my max health and damage, and then we ran to the center of the cave. Once there, we broke the now empty cocoon to summon the boss. The bubble hammer was quite useful and it made quick work of the boss's health bar. Next, a quick sidestep. Then a last second dodge, and now the mineral spider only had 1/3 of its health left. It was also very nice the spider didn't shoot any laser beams at us this time, which I'm sure contributed to our success. However, I still got caught in a bad spot and unsuccessfully tried using the tongue chain to get out of it. Thankfully I had almost full health, so I lived, and with that the mineral spider was no more. It gave us a legendary spider omni tool that worked as both a tier 4 axe and pickaxe. Very handy. We also got an overpowered spider staff which shot laser beams at a pretty high mana cost. Lastly, it also dropped us some spider ore. This was apparently apparently how we could unlock the next crafting tier at the anvil. The spider armor set offered more defense in general, and also a set bonus granting 1 additional dash for equipping all of the pieces. With our new Omni tool, we went straight to the center of the map, and finally we could break the Corrupted Heart. This triggered the Corrupted Blood event. The whole map was covered in red fog, and the water turned red. It also caused corrupted abominations to constantly spawn and shoot blood orbs at us. We quickly realized that defeating these would damage the event bar, and so the fighting began. It was chaotic and quite difficult staying alive. Heather died first, and a bit later I died too. Since our deaths were staggered, we were never actually technically defeated, so the event kept going. Also, my new laser staff was quite effective at dealing with the swarms of enemies at a relatively safe distance. Once we finally got the bar to 0%, the Corrupted King spawned. He was essentially a juiced up version of the Slime King, much faster and much more deadly, and his projectiles were all blood orbs. The range of the blood orbs was somewhat limited, however, so as long as we could keep our distance, we were pretty safe. Heather and I have known each other for a long time, and it showed. Our coordination was exceptional, and that is how we managed to hit an impressive 8 out of 22 or so of my healing projectiles. At this point I was getting impatient and I stopped playing it safe, and all of a sudden I found myself in a bad spot, right next to the Corrupted King. With a 30-second respawn timer, it was all on Heather now, so she did the smart thing and ran. When I respawned I was in a rush to get back, so I licked a tree and hurried along. Unfortunately, I found myself in a bad spot again almost immediately, this time underneath the Corrupted King, who at this point only had 63 health left. We were so close, but Heather's health was also low and she was hard pressed by the King's minions, but after 5 chakrams she landed the hit. Now we only had 2 more bosses to go, and likewise also only 2 more achievements to go. Defeating the Corrupted King had unlocked blood bars and with them the bloody armor set and weapons. The set bonus for this armor was 5% life leech, which sounded really appealing to us, so we were definitely not quite done with the Corrupted King. And as for the 2 remaining bosses, we had to get enough needles and dolls to craft the cursed doll and summon the Halloween boss, while the other boss was tied to the Thumbers. As our previous experiment in the desert didn't work, I had resorted to Google and learned that we had to get 4 different Thumbers from 4 different biomes. We clearly already had the Snow Thumper, so we still needed Thumbers from the swamp, the desert and the forest. We learned that the Thumbers could drop from any enemy in their respective biome, so we got to work. I should also mention that we had gone back to the center of the cave and gotten another spider Omni tool along with a staff for Heather. While I was running around in the swamp, I took out the Frog Prince again as I was hoping he'd drop a Thumper. No luck, but I did get another Bubble Bow, which I tested out for the first time, and it actually seemed pretty promising. Next, I triggered another Corrupted Blood event. We worked our way through the event and matched up against the Corrupted King again. This time went a lot smoother, maybe because of the power of double laser beams. Next, I decided that I wanted to try the Bubble Bow, so I crafted a bunch of sharp arrows and equipped the accessory that made ammo bounce on the ground. I honestly had pretty high hopes for this setup. I also got the legendary Reforge on my first attempt, so things were looking really good, and I was ready to head out again. I chopped some trees and ran into a coin thief, and my new bow setup did not disappoint as I took it out with ease. Then we did another Corrupted Blood event, and my new bow setup made quick work of the boss, and he dropped this syringe shooting gun. We now had enough blood bars to craft the bloody armor set, so we both did, and I also crafted a bloody knife. It took a few attempts, but I eventually got the legendary Reforge on it. I also optimized the Reforges on my accessories, and then I was off to the cave to look for materials for the cursed doll. The short boomerang-like throw of my bloody knife was very effective, and I took out the enemies in the Halloween biome with ease. And after a while I found a house with a hidden minecart track behind a bookshelf. And in my excitement I also missed a life flower right outside the house. At the end of the minecart track I found 3 chests, one of which contained 6 dolls and 6 needles, but also a whole cursed doll. This meant that we now had what we needed for 2 attempts at the Halloween boss. While I had been in the cave, Heather had been busy looking for Thumbers, unfortunately without any luck, so I crafted swarm potions which increased enemy spawn rate by 300% and got to work. Eventually the swarm Thumper dropped for me, though I didn't even notice immediately, but once I did, I went back home as Heather got the desert Thumper at almost the exact same time. And before I managed to go out hunting for the forest Thumper, Heather realized she already had one in her back, so instead I started clearing some space to have an arena to fight the bosses. I also placed down a tile of land from each of the 4 biomes, as the Thumpers would need to be placed on top of their respective biomes to work. Then I placed down torches, and I also built walls to be able to hook onto in case we'd need them. Our preparations were done and we felt ready for this. Unfortunately my recording was not, so you won't get to see us fail on our first attempt against the Grim Reaper, which is quite a shame because it was actually a pretty close call that left Heather slightly triggered, to the point where I could hardly convince her to give it another try. Before attempting again, I equipped an extra pair of frog legs as I felt the extra dash would be quite beneficial. Then we applied all our buffs, triple checked that I was recording, and summoned the Grim Reaper. This fight was all about avoiding the Grim Reaper and his sides. Periodically he'd teleport and shift his location, he would charge at us, and he would throw out his sides that would home in on us. At about the 40% mark Heather was slain, but I managed to stay alive by making avoiding him and the sides my top priority while trying to always keep one dash ready for emergencies. The entire time I was shooting at him with my bow, and eventually his health bar was worn down and death death itself was defeated. Honestly, I died so many times in this playthrough that it's maybe not quite fair saying death was defeated, but whatever, we'll go with it. By defeating death, we unlock the option to craft a new armor set with 3 different helm options, providing a bonus for either ranged, magic, or melee setups. And we had also gotten a magic broom weapon. Now it was time for the final boss and the final achievement of the playthrough. We placed down the thumpers, ready for the ultimate challenge. The ground shook and the Iron Devourer charged at us. I was kind of expecting something more grand, but it honestly looked kind of pathetic, and it actually was too. This fight was incredibly easy. There's not much to say about it. Like, it maybe didn't help that our setup against this thing was kind of perfect. The Iron Devourer consists of many joints, and each joint have its own hitbox, which meant that with our bow setup we could frequently hit the majority of the joints at the same time. This obviously meant we dealt a lot of damage, but it also meant that we were proccing our lifesteal like 5 to 10 times per arrow we shot, and we easily nullified any chip damage that we took. As such, it didn't take us very long to down it, which also completed the final achievement. The looted drop wasn't particularly noteworthy, but it did include a trinket that made you immune while dashing. As a bit of a victory lap, we summoned and defeated the Iron Devourer 2 more times, and with that the saga of new character had concluded. Just like my first trip to Tinkerlands had also concluded. Both Heather and I are very excited to return to explore more islands in the future. If you made it this far through my countless mistakes and terrible jokes, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If that's the case and you'd like to see more videos like it, then I'd be very interested in hearing what games you'd like to see me do next, as I currently kind of have choice paralysis from looking at my to-do list. As always, I'd also really appreciate a like or subscribe, but regardless, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. That's it for now, and I hope you have a great day.